I'm Chef Jasper, and today we're in the kitchen preparing risotto. Risotto 101 is what I like to call this, basic risotto. Now, there's so many other things you can add to this, and we'll talk about that, but let's just start with the basic recipe. First of all, we need to put a little bit of butter in the pan. And remember, I'm only using about a little less than half of the butter and the onion, because the rest of the butter we're gonna stay and use later on. Oh my gosh, what are we doing? I always like to say this, we're building layers right now. And that's okay if the fire is a little high, because we want to saute that. We want to get really the water out of the onions right now. And what happens when we do that, we start releasing all the sugars out of the onion. Therefore, we're going to start caramelizing the onion and giving this a lot of flavor. When we talk about really basic risotto, this dates back hundreds and hundreds of years. And you would not believe, in Italy, the Po Valley, that is the area where the rice is actually grown. And the people there who live on this, come on, this is what it's all about. This is not just only basic though, because it's really the base for a lot of dishes. And we'll start talking about mushrooms, we'll talk about apples, we'll talk about adding tomatoes, seafood, chicken, and more. Really, the list is endless. Now, what's happening right now? Well, if you're here, you can actually smell it, because it is absolutely, oh my gosh, the perfume coming off of this right now. And look what's happening. It's just, less than 2 minutes. But remember, we don't want to burn it, so I think my temperature is just perfect right now. We're not caramelized yet. The butter is not burning, so it's not going to be real nutty like in some recipes that I'll make, and I want a nutty butter. And at this point, we're going to add our risotto. Several different types of risotto that you can use. Risotto Vallone is one. Arborio is another. I'm using the arborio today. It's kind of like the basic risotto. That's what 90% of the Italians use. Cannaroli is another one. The cannaroli we love in the restaurant business because it's very, very creamy and it holds up. It doesn't disappoint the chef, as a saying in Italian, because sometimes we take our eye off of it. But if we're home and we're making risotto, and that's why you really have to be like a mama to this, we say. You have to treat this like a young little baby. And you're kind of thinking, what is he talking about, a young little baby? I'm not taking my eye off of it, am I? That's what I'm talking about. We're just toasting the rice right now. Look at the color of the onions. I'm very happy with this right now. And at this point, after about a minute, we're going to reduce the pan with a little bit of wine. And what happens, that wine, when I say reduce, it's going to be infused into our rice, and that's just the beginning of the infusion. What's happening right now, not only are we getting great color, great flavor, building all these layers, but the rice is absorbing the wine. And now that you don't see any wine left in the pan, we're in good shape right here. We slowly begin to incorporate our broth, whether it be a chicken broth, vegetable broth, or really some people just add water. Beef broth is okay also. My favorite, of course, is the chicken broth. I think you get a lot of flavor. And we'll continue to stir, not taking our eye off of this. Good temperature right now also. This is going to take about 16 minutes. 18 minutes total. Took me about 2 minutes or so. And we'll just let this sit and continue to add broth as needed. You'll see here it's just starting to absorb. And as it absorbs, you'll see the rice starting to get a little bigger and a little plumper each time. Well, what's happening, it's taking in all of the broth. And after another minute or so, we'll add some more broth. At this point, we really don't want to season the rice. A lot of people like to add salt to the onions. Well, that's just going to draw more water off of it. A lot of people will add the salt right now, but I want to get the flavor, that wine in there right now and everything else. And the salt is really not going to bring that out. What happens to that salt when you add it right now, it kind of absorbs the broth a little quicker, and we don't want that. There's time for seasoning, believe me, and you'll see that in just a few. All right. Notice how it's reduced probably about, I'd say maybe 40% so far. Here we go again. More of the broth, or we like to say brodo. And we'll continue to do this over the next 14 to 15 minutes. All right, look at the rice right now, and look at the absorption of the water that it's taking on right now. And look just how it's becoming plump, just what I said. We'll finish with a little more brodo, a little more of the broth. Now, if you're at home in the kitchen, I think that's the easiest way, but a lot of people, especially in the restaurants, we have pots of broth, and we just keep adding ladles when you see as needed. But at this point, it's continuing to cook down. You can taste the risotto at this point if you'd like to for flavoring. I kind of know where we're at right now. But what we do not want to do is add the butter too quickly, or our seasoning, or the cheese especially. What's happening right now, they call this, the word is called ondine, O-N-D-I-N-E. And that is how we finish the risotto. So we're talking about the basic risotto, but then we need to back this up while this is still cooking down and talk about adding things. If we were going to do mushrooms, I would probably saute the mushrooms right when I added the onions and let them cook down. But remember, you probably won't see the onion, or you won't see the mushrooms, because they're going to just disappear into the broth. And I chop them up so fine, but what am I looking for? I'm looking for flavor, especially if you're using morels or dried chanterelles or dried porcinis. We want the flavor more than anything. So you can reserve some and then add at the end. Broccoli, cauliflower, all those vegetables, well, we would use the vegetable broth. We would actually boil our cauliflower, boil our broccoli, boil the zucchini, and we would actually just use that broth as needed and then add the cauliflower and broccoli, probably about at this point right now. We still want to be nice and firm, the broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, whatever vegetable you're using. Tomato sauce, if we're doing a lobster risotto, I would be using a lobster or shrimp broth, and I would saute some shrimp and lobster meat ahead of time. I would leave some in another pan so I can also add that at the end. So remember, if you're cooking with shrimp and lobster, it's going to disappear pretty quickly. You'll have a great flavor though, and that's what we want. But then at the end, we want to add a little more. Perhaps green onions, and I love to finish up with chopped chives or green onions. All right, here we go. We're just about at that point where al dente, we're looking for it al dente, 2 to 2, dente. So we want that. And we're going to add just one more ladle or a little bit of the broth and let that continue to cook down. And that's the final broth that we're going to add. And then we'll add our butter. At this point, I'm going to add a little bit of cracked pepper. I also like red pepper in this. A little bit of salt. And then here's a trick now, not too much salt, remember, because our cheese is salty. Here we have our saffron. Very quickly, I'm going to get some of this broth right here, just a little bit, and I'm going to add this to it. And then kind of mix it up a little bit. Oh, look at the color. That's what we want, but also the flavor. And those threads, we just kind of activated it right there. Now look what happens. Look at the rich yellow color right now. Oh, so beautiful. Oh, so tasty. Risotto 101 at this point. Oh, so beautiful. We're at the 17-minute mark. I told you 18 minutes it's going to take. And at this time, We're going to add our butter. Yes, this is when we start to finish. Of course, the ondine happened. The cream started coming out of the rice. Look at the butter, what's happening now. At this point, a little bit of grated Parmigiano Reggiano or Pecorino Romano, whatever you'd like. Remember, it's going to be salty, and here we go. This is it. Let's turn our heat off at this point. And there you have it. Risotto 101, a classic dish, centuries old, not difficult to make, as you can see. So many people are afraid to make this, but don't be. Let it finish up the last few minutes. It looks like it's watery. It looks like it's too creamy. Believe me, as this finishes, everything will come together. The last 30, 40 seconds. We'll put this on a plate. We'll finish with a few green onions or minced chives, whatever you like. And you have the perfect dish that I would be just so honored to serve my family. Basic risotto, Risotto 101, from me to your family. I do hope you enjoy. Brought to you by Hen House Markets.